Hi, I'm Pam Hayes from Hayes Sewing Machine Company of Wilmington, Delaware, and today we're going to do a little bit of off-the-edge embroidery on my embroidery machine. So today I'm working with the Solaris 2 Baby Lock, and this design that I'm doing you can do as long as your embroidery machine does a 5x7 embroidery field. So mine is going to be a little bit bigger, but it'll work just fine. So if you take a look, it's done by the Kimberbell company, and they do it with tea towels. So we're going to do a tea towel today, but there's a lot of different ideas. And take a look on the back, and this is Kimberbell, and it's KD 588. It's called Over the Edge Applique, and this has to do with spring and summertime things. So if you take a look down here, this is what we're going to focus on today. So you'll see how it's a foam pad, so they're a little bit of 3D with a ribbon, and they're on the edge of a tea towel. Pretty cool. And then next time, I'm going to be showing you how to do a placemat. The quilting was done in the embroidery machine, and also take a look, the pocket is done doing the 3D applique as well. Pull yourself around. Now, one thing to be aware of, a couple things that you needed to have to get started. I always like to print my instructions. It just makes life easier for me, or if you want to put it onto your tablet, great. But I would definitely recommend having at least the information there so you can access it. You're going to notice that they have materials needed, and they're going to say 5x7. So what that means is if you're using your 5x7 hoop. So this is what's going to happen when you go and you're going to line it up, and you're going to take it and you're going to go into your sewing room. This is what you're going to need. Next column is what you actually need to cut. All right? And when I flip this, I'm doing the 6x10. So if you take a look, materials needed, this is what I'm going to be cutting. All right. You need to work with a stabilizer that is a sticky, water soluble. So what I am using in the store is Fabri-Solvi sticky. So it's going to have paper on the one side, so paper, and then a fusible or a sticky that's going to wash away. We'll talk about that in just a second. If you're doing the 3 different colors for the flowers, you need 3 colors. And you need to have 2 squares of each. Think about it. You have the back as well as the front. On the one and this was a plain one that I did, I'm doing one that's one out of my stash that had a print. So what I'm doing for that is I have the blues and the yellow that I think are going to match nicely. Ribbons for the leaves. You'll need the foam, which is going to make it puffy. And then you need a water-soluble, like sulky solvy. You also are going to need some tape. Now, first thing you're going to do is you want to load the information into a USB stick. Remember that the CD is just that. It's a CD. It's going to have multiple formats on this CD, which is great. So it doesn't really matter what embroidery machine you have, you're good to go. I'm using a Baby Lock Solaris, so I'm going to be working with PES as the format. So I've taken the information from here and I've put it onto my USB stick. I have it on the screen, and the first thing it basically wants me to do, per my instructions, is they wanted me to iron my tea towel in half lengthwise so I know where the center is. And I'm going to put a pin in there so I know where my center is. They want you to, with the Fabri-Solvi, the sticky Fabri-Solvi, you're going to put it into your hoop paper side up. That's going to be the important part. I take a pin and I'm going to score around, and I'm scoring around inside of my hoop. Try not to push too hard because you don't want to go through the Fabri-Solvi. So then at this point, I never had so much trouble getting this to come off. There you go. All right, so see how we're scoring. And where I've cut it or scored it with my pin, we're going to make sure that all of that goes away. All right, so all of the inside section, we're good to go. We're going to take, and now we're going to put this onto our embroidery unit. Now, this is 3D work, so think of lace. If you've done embroidery before, you think of lace. So I want to have, in this case, I had 3 colors. So I took the time to rewind a bobbin of each color. So I had the pink in my machine, top and bottom, the yellow, as well as the blue. And I'm doing the same thing today. All right, so we're going to do that. The first thing they want you to do is, after you've loaded up, you've chosen your design, you're going to take and you're going to sew. And it's very boring. It is a straight stitch. So not very interesting. And yes, we are sewing through simply the stabilizer. And what it did is it put a little blip. Can you see that blue mark right there? All right. What that's going to do is that tells me where to put my towel. So I'm going to go and take a look. There's the blue mark I'm talking about. I line up the bottom of my tea towel. So that it lines up on the line with that center. Can you see my pin in the center? See how they're lining up? So make sure that is all nice and pushed down. Hence, off the edge. Alrighty. Now I'm going to place this in. Going to line this up. Excuse me whilst I fiddle for a second. There you go. Everything is in. And we are all set. Now, what it's going to do, it's going to do an embroidery basting. So it's going to hold everything down for us. I lower the foot, and then it's going to sew a rectangle. And you see how it's stitching straight across. Now that is going to be taken out at the end. All right, so if you take a look in the instructions, it had us fold our tea towel, scored around the inside, and you saw how it pulled the paper. It sewed and made the little line. I lined it up along the edge, and we've sewn our rectangle. Now at this point, take a look, it's going to stitch the foam placement. So in other words, where on the tea towel are we going to put the foam? So it wants us to stitch that next. I'm just going to lower the foot and hit start. And it's going to do all of the marking. And you see again it's stitching just on the stabilizer in some places, and then some on the towel and the stabilizer. So that's the second flower. And then we're going to slide it, or the machine does it, and it's going to do the third one. All right. It comes to a stop for us. Now, this is the foam I use. This is by Annie. This is soft and stable. This is what I'm going to use in the tea towel today. And they'll give you the measurements that you need. And if memory serves, it was like 7.5 by 3.5. Okay, but they'll give you the measurements that you need. So at this point, you're going to slide it in. Now, remember how we just did those outlines? Guess what? It wants us to put the foam on top and covering those outlines that you see on there. Now, they also tell you to tape. Go for it. Okay? However, the foam is kind of being held a little bit by the actual sticky part of the stabilizer, so I don't worry too much about it. And who said I'm not a rebel? Okay, so you see though, I am just gently holding it, letting it do its thing, but now you can see the placement again. You see how it's actually stitching around, and then that's where we're going to go and we're going to trim. So after it's done stitching, when the machine stops, you're going to snip all the way around. Again, that's one. It's now doing the second. So this is a nice thing to use up some of your bits of, if you love to do bags by Annie like I do, you have your little bits of foam left over. Great way to utilize them. Something nice and creative. Whoop. If the thread breaks, Your machines will let you know. And I'll just back up a little bit. I'm hitting one stitch at a time. And there you go. That's the second flower. And then we have our final. If you didn't want it quite so 3D, minus the foam. Alright, so it stopped again for us. Now, I like using the applique scissors that are curved. So you see how they have a little bit of a bend to them? This one curves up. Fairly narrow blade. Works great. Any small pair of scissors will work fine for you. So what I like to do is I like to take my hoop off the machine a little bit, and you'll notice you keep the scissors down, and we're going to snip nice and close all the way around. Something to be aware of, you'll take a look, there's a little bit here. I didn't worry about that at all when I did my sample. This one, though, I do want to trim that out. Sometimes if you get started with a seam ripper, it'll also help you out. And I'll be right back. Hello, I'm back. All right, now take a look. I have trimmed all of my foam. And you really want to be careful not to trim the stabilizer, and don't trim your lovely tea towel. Now at this point, if you want to put ribbon in, so if you take a look at mine, I have the ribbon. This is what we're going to do next. Now, as with all things, when you're doing applique with your embroidery machine, they will give you a placement. So I lower the foot, and it's going to give you a line. It's something simple. You're going to see a line go across. It's going to jump up, and it's going to do another line going across to the other side. So there, see, there's the line, and it's going to do its matching partner on the other side. All right, they have told you how long to cut these. I think it was like 3 inches, 3.5, something like that. You take your ribbon, you make a loop. No problem. You then take, and you're going to tape this. So you're going to be using a lot of tape. We are going to tape, and we are going to place it a 1/2 inch beyond the line. All right. So 1/2 inch. I stitched through the tape. It'll be just fine. All right. So then we're going to do the same thing. You put the ends together. You line it up so you're about a 1/2 inch beyond. So there's the line. I'm about a 1/2 inch beyond, so I have my loops going out. All right. Lower the foot. Hit start. And it's going to tack it in, and it's going to stitch across. And it's going to do the same thing on the other side. And there you go. said, didn't want ribbon this time, just skip the steps. You can fast forward through it on your machine. Now they want you to take, and you're going to trim. So I'll take the tape off. And they do tell you, remove the tape. They do tell you carefully, remove the tape. You know, just remove the tape. Alrighty. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Okay? So we take, see, there's my tape. Just taking my tape off. And then about 1/8 of an inch. And there you go. All right. Now, at that point, this is where we're going to, sorry, just trying to get the tape off my fingers. All right. Remember how I said we had another piece of water-soluble stabilizer? Okay. So this is just the regular Solvay. And we're going to place this all along the top. See how it's going to hold the ribbons down? This you do tape. All right, you're going to put some tape down because this is going to be kind of, you're going to be taking the hoop on and off the machine. So you don't really want to get the ribbon caught around the foot. Ask me how I know. All right, so we're just going to tape this down. And away we go. All right, makes sense? Now's the fun part. Now we're going to go and we're going to, this is where you have to pay attention. Where we had the first flower, you can see our piece so we know where the first flower goes. Can you see where it says front of hoop? You're then going to tape that piece down, but look at that, back of hoop. So that's how we get it kind of reversible. So you want to make sure you take the hoop off the machine. And I'm looking at the back side. And I'm taping. I'm looking at the right. The wrong side is going down. And I want to put tape on here. This is why I would recommend that you always have the instructions there. I'm sure you guys are better than I, but you know, I'd forget that step. All right, so we have the bottom, but you can see how it's helpful if you have something across the top, because as you're taking your hoop on and off, you can kind of see that you might get it caught, the ribbons caught on the foot or caught somewhere. I always take a peek, see underneath, just make sure everything's okay. Don't hit start yet, because remember, you got to cover the front. Okay. And we're going to put a little tape there. All right. Lower the foot. And hit start, and away we go. And can you see how it's doing the shape again? It goes around it a couple of times. Ties it off. And then at this point, we want to trim everything off. So again, we're going to take And remember how when we trim, we're going to get as close as we can. So see how I keep the scissors down? Alright, I'll be right back. Hi, welcome back. I have prepped my next, or the middle flower. I'm going to do yellow for this one, and I've prepped it the same way. So I have the piece on the back side, and then we have the top. Do not forget, if you want to change your thread, this is the time to do it. And we're going to lower the foot. And we're good to go. So again, it's going to stitch around this piece. You have your straight stitch. And remember, sews it twice. Alrighty, get ready to trim. Hi, back again. Done the second flower. In my case, it was the yellow. And I've set the last flower, the blue one, exactly the way we did before. So remember, your squares on top, taped down, as well as underneath, taped down. And don't forget to change your thread if you're using different color. All right, so lower the foot, hit start, and remember, it's going to stitch around it twice. So it goes around the first time. And there it's doing the second. And then it's going to stop, and we're going to trim the back and the front. All right. Hi, back again. All three flowers have been stitched and trimmed. So you see how this is the front and that's the back. So everything's been trimmed, front and back. Now we're going to do our cover stitch, or the satin stitch. It starts with the middle flower. Okay, because if you think about it, the other ones kind of, you see they're kind of going over top of. So it's going to do the yellow bit first in my case. So that's why, remember to change your thread. Top and bottom. You want to put the yellow thread on, in my case, what I'm doing today. Again, get everything laid out. Lower the foot and hit start. And it goes around several times. And I really do like that blue with the tea towel that I have. Now remember, when you're working with the tea towel, if you are working with one that has a tag, do this on the opposite side of the tag. And if it's going to have a lot of times they'll have like a little bit of trim that you could hang your tea towel over a hook. Also, sew the opposite side. Though I am here to tell you that you can also cut that out and restitch that. So again, I have my yellow thread, top and bottom. I still have my clear solvy on the top. That's holding the ribbon down and everything in its place. And it's stitching around. So you can see how it's a really pretty satin stitch. I don't know about you, but I would not want to have to trim and kind of curve all of those corners. with my stitching. So it's going to do our satin stitch for us. It's going to take about 4 minutes to do it. How I know that is it actually is listed on my machine how many minutes it's going to take to sew this out. You'll notice how it does a bigger stitch, and then it goes and does the satin stitch over top. The bigger stitch is what they call underlay, and it's to help support the fabric and also make sure everything's tacked down nicely. Now the only thing that I did not do on my tea towels is the center of the flowers. You can put buttons on there. Totally an option. I just thought mine were pretty as they were. And that's the thing that's great with embroidery. You can make it exactly how you like it. And it's going to finish it off, and then it's going to come to a stop for me. Now it's going to do the bottom flower next, so I'm going to change to blue. So remember, when you do that, take the hoop off the machine, and we're going to pop this in. I'm using 40 weight embroidery thread today. I'm using a rayon embroidery thread, and I'm using an embroidery needle as well. 7511 for the embroidery needle. The embroidery needle is nice in the fact that it's a little bit bigger of an eye than your standard if you had a 7511 universal. So it helps the thread pass through easier. Alright, so I've changed it to the blue. Remember to have your hoop on and attached. Lower the foot and hit start. And I'll be back in just a second. Hi, welcome back. Complete. Yay! So we have all 3 flowers with our cover stitch done. So you can see front and back look great. Now what do? Now what you're going to do is you're going to take the tape off of the solvy, and you'll notice that as you're pulling it, honestly, it just really pulls right out the front, which is really nice. Alright, now for the back, it's sticky, correct? That's the whole point of us using the Fabri-Solvy sticky. So we're going to take this out of the hoop, and a couple things. You need to do your basting. So remember how we stitched it? So what you're going to do, get my eyeballs on, you're going to take, and a lot of times I'll do this from the back so it's a little easier, and I'm going to get my basting out, and then you see how it just starts to peel away. you're going to take your basting out, and then you're going to trim right next to the flowers, and then you want to soak it. I soaked mine when I was doing the sample, probably a couple of hours. I just kind of soaked it out, then let it dry, and you're done. Now remember, if you want to add the buttons, obviously I would put them right in the center, but I think it's really nice as it is. Now, next time, we are going to do the placemat. This is on the same CD. So when you're working with it, I'm going to show you, this is actually quilted with your embroidery machine. It takes 2 hoopings to do that. And then I'm also going to show you how to do the applique, and look at that, it has a cute little opening in the top. You can put your cutlery in there. And we're going to show you how to do applique again. This one is just applique on the top. We don't do it on the reverse. Binding is also done around the edge. So it's roughly 13 by 17 in that area for your placemat.